similar to the tabletop game. Like it's pretty much the tabletop game, but just on the.
That's good.
Testing.
There's an echo for me though.
Yeah,
I can hear
I'm just.
myself talking.
Okay. I was just testing the audio on the. All right, we're looking good. All right, welcome everybody to CanHammer, your source for 40K from the Great White North. This is episode 151. Episode 150 is coming. Chris is being a little bit busy because literally he could have a baby any minute now. But he is going to get episode 150 up on the iTunes, but you can see it on YouTube and on Twitch. And so this episode 151, where I'm joined by special guests Skari, a.k.a. Ridvan, and Jim to talk about LVO, which was last weekend. Seems like it's been ages now.
How's it going? Eon. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so LVO was just the weekend gone. It is the largest 40K event in the world by quite a large margin. How many people actually turned up in the end? Do you guys know?
I think registered players was 662 that started round one.
That's right. There's a decent amount of drops after day one, but
yeah,
around 660. And I think the London GT, which is the next biggest, was like 400.
Yeah.
So by about 50%. The next biggest.
Yeah. So we're going to talk all about that. First, we'd like to thank all our sponsors. We got Dan at Sequence Comics, Hoyt up at Thunder Games and Gifts, Martin over at Dyson Decks, and of course Dave at Tista Minis. Thank all our patrons, both old and new and future. And it's because of everyone's support we can keep the show going and produce all the content that we produce. So thank you very much. We don't need to introduce our guests. Jim's been on before, and Skari's been on many times. Skari will be showing up on video soon. He's just busy running an errand right now.
I'm in the webway, okay?
The webway.
That is what it is.
So, before we go talk about LVO, we will just quickly mention upcoming tournaments. So we the CanHammer team tournament is currently at 20 teams, which is the number that we had last year. We have 6 extra spots this year if there's still people who want to bring a team. It will be in Ajax, Ontario, which is just east of Toronto, May 11th and 12th. And it's going to be fairly hotly contested this year. We've got Skari, I think, is the captain of Team East or West. I can't remember. West or East. ETC Canada East. Team East. And Jim, which team are you on, East or West?
I believe I am on the other team, so East. Or no, I'm West.
All right. So
I'm on one of them.
You're on one of them. What we've got this
Not
year...
Skari's team, though.
We've got the potential ETC Team Canada players splitting up into 2 of the teams, and they will be duking it out against Team CanHammer, which are defending champions, and a bunch of other teams as well. So it's going to be fairly hotly contested, as it always is at the top of CanHammer team. So if people are having troubles finding a team, or if you're a team looking for some more players, just let me know or let Chris know or post on the CanHammer team event page, and we can use that as a kind of matchmaking service. We've got Martin bringing the team over from England, and so we've got some good teams.
Really? All the way from England? Yeah. That's crazy.
He's working on
I'm really excited about that. Yeah, Martin's
working
bringing
on some
people like Gavin and like some Gavin Heritage and some other guys down from the UK. It's going to be a stacked team. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because you'd think that would be extremely expensive, but flying Vancouver to Toronto is like $800, and it's probably cheaper to fly from England to Toronto. So
it definitely is
not that bad.
It definitely is cheaper to fly across the ocean than to Vancouver. Yeah. So that'll be exciting, and so we've still got 6 spots left. So get in there, and we will be publishing packs and things like that as soon as the ETC has decided what they want to do. I haven't heard anything about that yet, but obviously we just run whatever ETC will be running. Just so people know, list of missions and book cutoffs will be as usual about 4 weeks before. So that gives us plenty of time after the spring FAQ. So spring FAQ will almost definitely be in unless GW really delays it for some reason.
So definitely won't be in, is what you're saying.
Well, normally what?
They're
If
1 for
history
2
is to
right
repeat
now.
itself,
They're at 50% for FAQs, so I wouldn't put it past them to have a late
I guess
one.
we'll just have to see.
Or it'll be the last day of April or something like that, just like they did with the winter FAQ.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. So that's CanHammer team. I'm trying to organize the next Day of Blood 2, which is Age of Sigmar tournament. We're looking at beginning of April and probably running it with Dan down in Brockville. We could host up to 25 to 30 players. So yeah, stay tuned to the webpage. We'll be letting people know when that is happening. Okay, so I think without too much ado, you guys got any tournaments you want to plug? I know Barry Bash is coming up next week, 2 weekends.
Yeah, so next Saturday, Sunday, the Barry Bash is coming up, and then in Barry you also have the TKO, which is the Kempenfeld Open, which will be happening later in the year. And then we've also got the TGX, which will be coming up in June or July. There's the Sudbury, the Basement Open, which happens in June, I believe, after the Beef and Wing. So many events.
Yeah, there's a lot of events. It's hard to keep track, in fact.
I'm also this coming weekend going to the Guardian Cup in Portland, Oregon. So if you're in Portland, Oregon, there's still spots out. It's a 2-day GT. And also West Coast GT in Vancouver, which is April Easter long weekend in Vancouver. It's a 2-day. It's probably our biggest kind of regular tournament in Vancouver. And that's happening in April, I believe. So check those out. I think they're both up on the ITC website if you want more Frontline Gaming, if you want more information.
Awesome. And way in advance, but do plan August 16th, 17th, and 18th, Capital City Bloodbath 2019 in Ottawa. We're looking for big numbers this year, probably 150 plus for 40K, and hopefully get close to 100 for AOS, but we'll see. We're bringing back the Friday. Haven't quite decided what we're doing, but we might be doubles, 40K and AOS doubles. A couple of people have wanted to run, what's the Game of Thrones game called?
Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah. I think Clarence wants to run
it's a really fun game
tournament for that. We don't know how many people would come though, but he might want to run that. Somebody asked us if we wanted to run Lord of the Rings. So we might be bringing back a few of the smaller games as well, maybe on the Friday. So we'll see. But that's the weekend, August 16th, 17th, 18th. So mark it off. It's a great time to be in Ottawa.
I also heard a rumor that there's some pretty famous players from the States planning to come up for that. So if you want some good competition, definitely the place to be for Canada.
Yes. I won't pop any names, but I know at least...
I didn't pop any names. I was... I know
at least
you'll have to find out, I guess.
Yeah. So this should be good. In other words, it should be a really good tournament. Okay. Well, let's go on to it. So in case people don't know, LVO is the biggest 40K event of the season. It is also the final event of the ITC season. So right after LVO, literally like the Sunday of the LVO, the next season starts with a little RTT. And so if you want to win something in ITC, like Best in Faction, or if you want to win it all, you basically have to go to LVO, because if you don't go to LVO, people can overtake you with a decent performance. There was, as we said, 600 and something players this year, which is crazy. They played 6 rounds, and then the top 9 to 16 played a 7th game. Is that how it worked out in the end?
So the top 4 went through, and then 5 to 12 played a phantom 7th round.
Okay, 7 games. And then the top 8 went through a knockout little tournament, which came to our winner. And probably no surprise, it was won by Brandon Grant this year, playing Guard and Knights. Well, Guard and Castellan. Probably not too surprising. What do you guys think of that?
It was a great match, and stand-up guy. He had a great run all the way to the end, and he played it expertly. It was fantastic to watch.
The top 8 was 3 lists with Castellans, I think 2 or 3 Eldar / Yanari lists. No orcs in the top 8. both Nick and Steve Pamprine, which I guess were the two favorites to make it to the
Matt
top
Root
eight
had
with
taken
Orcs.
Orcs too, I believe.
Yeah, Matt Root. Yeah, they all got. They didn't make it, so no Orcs in the top 8. Now everyone's like, "Oh, Orcs suck, Orcs suck," which they definitely don't. They just got beat with some very hyper-competitive lists by very good players, I guess.
Yeah, there was a lot of really good players that went out early or day 1 or day 2. So, Tony Kopak, Andrew Gagno, some of the kind of names you usually see winning tournaments. With that many good players, it's just inevitable that you're going to have some of these titans and these guys that are well known around the scene that are winning tournaments, going down in the first few days. So definitely was interesting to see. I don't think anyone in the top 8. There wasn't much surprise for a lot of the guys that made the top 8. So I think everyone that got there is well deserved.
Yeah, what happened to the? I was just following up BCP. It seemed like number 8 spot was going to be that Marine list with the Repulsors and the Predators, but then it got replaced by Josh Death's Demon list. So what happened with that? Did somebody drop out, or was that it wasn't done yet?
The Marine player was he had to play the 7th round, and he got knocked out in that 7th round.
Oh, okay, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So unlike the regular tournament where the winners play winners, in the elimination round, the 5th place seed played the 12th place seed, and the 6th place with the 11th place. So you're kind of playing. There was an advantage to being finished at 5th, and that was you got to basically play the worst player in that Phantom round. And I think for the most part, the player that was ahead won in almost every one of those matchups.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
All right. I guess most people were pretty surprised that that Marine list made it so far with 3 Predators. But G-Man and Repulsors is pretty nasty. I felt that sting up in Sudbury. It's a pretty nasty combination.
Yeah, I think the thing to understand too is like with 660 players, and this isn't to take away anything from anyone that made it 6-0. I think that's like obviously an amazing accomplishment. But just as I said, a lot of the really good players, even Nick, even Steve, they hit some pretty hard matchups right away, and kind of in that first 6 games, and kind of got eliminated. Some of the other ETC guys got eliminated, whereas you could almost, and again, I don't know exactly the record of that specific Marine player, so I'm not speaking about him specifically, but I think there's a very good chance you could go 6-0 in that tournament and not really hit a super, super tough matchup, or hit matchups that, if you do hit a really good player, you have a really good matchup against it. So you can kind of mitigate those things. Obviously 40K is very skill based, and the player matters. But I think, especially when you start getting at those, high level where the player skill starts to level out a bit, the matchups make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with so many people, you could totally just miss what you don't want to play. Conversely, there was a large proportion of all the really kind of big name players there. So there was a chance that you were going to hit someone decent as well. So as you say, going 6-0 at LVO is an accomplishment regardless. And,
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I didn't do that, so I don't want to take away from those guys. And obviously, guys like Nick and Steve both didn't do that because they basically hit the wrong matchup at the wrong time, and I'm sure that's something we'll talk about a little bit. So
when you go to an event with so many people, it's there's a lot of magical things that have to happen for you to really get to that point. And when everything kind of aligns, good matchups, decent strategy, good play-by-plays, a little bit of luck on your side, it all kind of makes for a full tournament. It's all the people, even people went 4-2 and 5-1 and just 6-0. They all had that innate ability and to be able to go all the way given the chance.
Yeah. So I guess let's start with you, Skari. Just in terms of what you brought and what you thought you were going to end up facing, sort of some of your army choices. I know you changed your army from when I last saw it, which was up in Sudbury. So tell us a little bit about that. And by the way, if people want to know about Ridvan's crazy journey to LVO, let alone the tournament itself, you can check it out on his on Scartcast. It's quite the tale involving passports, not in shoes, but trips across the world just to get your passport, and it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, my passport was in my shoe the whole time. I blame Val for that.
Shout out to Val.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It was definitely, I wouldn't have been able to do it without everybody who helped out and made it possible. So it's up on that. But the biggest switch that I had made from my previous list is I had taken out the Chronos, which I'd been playing around with for a long time, and went back to the tried and true 2 units of 3 Talos that are just so much better. They're very hard to kill, and they just do everything that you want them to do really, really well. And I switched out the Witches that I had and the Razorwing Jet Fighter for 3 units of Scourge, with deep striking shredders and 1 unit of Haywire Blasters. And they proved to be very, very useful all tournament.
Okay, sweet. So what were you expecting? Just the usual meta stuff?
I was expecting, I'm very comfortable with certain matchups in the meta, but I was definitely expecting to see a more horde-based army. Like orcs were definitely one of those things that you had to prepare for, especially since a lot of the top players had decided to jump on that orc bandwagon. And if you didn't have the right tools to deal with them, there was a good chance that you wouldn't be able to make it into the top.
Yeah, for sure. And so what did you feel were your chances? Because I think going into LVO, Skari, you were like 9th or 10th overall, like in ITC, which is fairly awesome, obviously.
Yeah, going into the LVO, I was 7th overall.
7th overall. Okay, so you've been doing pretty well all season.
Yeah, it was definitely a good run. So I my expectations were, to go and mostly experience the event. I know I have the ability to go all the way, but I know that it's a long road, and a lot of things have to happen for it to happen. So I was taking it one game at a time, and being my first complete ITC season, I'm just taking what I learned from here and putting into practice for the next season.
Cool. And how about you, Jim? You were Mr. Hashtag So Hot right now. Jim Vesal's everywhere, and you were involved in the charity hammer, and so kind of everybody knows who you are now, Jim. So were people gunning for you? What changes did you make to your list for LVO?
So I actually played the same list I played at Golden Screw Cup, which I went to about 2.5 weeks before the LVO. And I actually went undefeated there. I came second with 1,000 Suns, 3 Demon Princes. I did add a unit of 28 Pink Horrors to my army for Orcs. I didn't play Orcs all tournament. They actually did really well in my other matchups as well, so I was glad I added them. And I knew I was going to face a lot of Eldar and Guard. And I played, let me just see here. I played Marines, Eldar, Marines, Eldar, Marines.
Okay,
so,
we got half of your prediction right.
So I didn't actually play any Guard, which was unfortunate, but I didn't play any Knight. I played 1 Knight in total, which was about what I thought I'd play. No Castellans. I know everyone's been scared of the Castellan, but it was actually funny because once I saw who made it to the top 8, I felt like my list was actually a pretty good list if I could have made it into the top 8 against those lists. Unfortunately, I ran into, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, but I had some unfortunate games. And, overall, I think going into the LVO, this was my first LVO. This is my first year playing Warhammer 40,000 since 3rd edition. So I'm traditionally a fantasy player, and I just picked up 40K after a long time away from it. So I started playing basically in December of last year. So LVO is kind of about a year of just over 13 months of playing 40K competitively. I'm pretty happy with how my season went for that TC, and overall how I did this year and how I grew as a player. I feel, I feel a lot more confident. And I think that was a big thing. A lot of times early in the season going into a tournament, I would definitely not feel confident going to certain matchups or against certain players. But now going into a game, I feel like I can win every game. It doesn't matter who I'm playing or what the lists are. Every game I go into, I feel like I can win, and I have the ability to win. And I think that's a big thing for any player, and not letting you get inside your head or not feeling like you've already lost the game before it started. So
what's it like going to LVO? I've never been, and I probably will never get to go. Like, what's it like going into a hall where there's like 700 people playing 40K? Like, it must be ridiculously noisy. But like, what's that feel like? Is it? It must be intimidating sometimes. It's your first time, I think, for both of you guys, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of like thoughts and things were going through your mind before that first game?
It was just massive.
Yeah.
It was incredible. That, and we were all wishing that BCP worked.
Well, I don't think they were ready for that many people. Plus all the other people who are actually not out the LVO also using BCP. But yeah.
Yeah, I think from the experience as a whole was great. I've been to Vegas once before, so I was prepared for kind of the spectacle of it, the lights, the music, the noise, the drinking, the smoking, all the stuff that's kind of distracting you. There's a lot of sensory overload when you get to Vegas. It's just everything is over the top. Everything is kind of just one next level above, and the actual tournament was no different. You walk into the hall and literally to the horizon, there's people playing 40K or other games. And I actually think that it was so big that it's kind of at a point where you kind of lose sense of how big it is. And you just got to focus on what the table in front of you. And that's really all that, you can kind of think about. So I actually felt like the size of the tournament or the size of the hall, the noise, it didn't seem like it was any louder. I think our hall was actually quite reasonable. I've been to much louder tournaments in much smaller spaces. Yeah. So I think
the ceilings were really tall, so it was very it wasn't as loud as you might have thought.
Right. And I know for BCP, so basically, I don't know if I'm using the BCP beta app, and I don't know if it's why, but I was actually able to get into BCP during the first round. So I spent the first 45 minutes of the first round giving people's pairings out. I was wandering around yelling at people, seeing if they needed their pairings, and I probably gave my pairings out to about 7 or 8 people. They were all just like, "You're the man, thank you so much." And I was like, "Okay, but this is the last one. I got to get to my table." And then 10 more people will come up to me, and I'm like, okay, but these are the last ones. And so, and then people will tell other people that there's a guy over there that can give you your pairing, because there's a huge line to the TOs to get their pairings off their the main TO app. And I was kind of at the back of the line, just working my way down the line. So a lot of people were really, really thankful, and that was something I felt good doing. I felt like I was doing my good deed for the week, helping people out with their pairings. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't imagine. For me, the biggest I've seen is Capital City, and that's pretty big, but it's a big space, and so it's not so compressed. I can imagine. I've been to Vegas, and those hotels are pretty large. They're ready for it. That's probably a small convention for them. It's definitely a small convention for them.
For sure.
So yeah, that's cool. And I guess there was no food because you could get your Vegas buffets and. Everything else was pretty good. How about these magic boxes that people were fearing? How many magic boxes did you guys play with?
Not as many as I thought.
It was definitely a non-issue in any of my games. There was 1 or 2 on some of my tables, but they're generally off to the side. They're generally I brought a Hellforged Scorpius, which can shoot units out of line of sight, and I never shot at anything that was out of line of sight. Anything that I never really shot at stuff that I wouldn't normally be able to shoot at had I just moved a model to see it. I shot from out of line of sight to my advantage, but it wasn't because I wasn't trying to shoot things inside boxes or like it wasn't really like I wasn't like thank God I have this thing. For the most part, there was one game I played with against Marines, and he sent a bunch of stuff inside the box. And at the end of the day, like the objective was outside the box, and the game was played 90% outside of the box. And you just make do, and like it wasn't a big deal. I think a lot of people kind of created a bit of a boogeyman. Mm-hmm. And I even know on the main stream table for Warhammer TV, they had no magic boxes. So the TV that all the like top games were happening on didn't have any magic boxes. So if you had planned to be playing on those and you're in like the top player, you didn't ever get to use that to your advantage, because that was all Games Workshop training. Like they had set up that table, and they definitely didn't have any enclosure.
It was definitely more of a Nova style setup in the final table with the big L's.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Skari? Did you come across any magic boxes?
Yeah, so I played, I think there was a box on my table 3 out of the 6 games that I played. And only in one there was more than one box. But they came into play, but I had units that were well equipped to go in and clear them out. So it was never really going to be, I was able to take more advantage of them myself than my opponents.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, let's go into some games. I don't think we need to necessarily go through all 6 of every one of your games, but why don't you guys pick like what the game you thought you played the best that may not have been a game that you won, and the game where you thought you didn't play that well, and we'll start with that. Why don't we start with you, Skari?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 games. The game that I played the best, I want to say, was my round 2 game, and that was against a gentleman that was playing Space Wolves with lots of Wolfen, Long Fangs, aggressors. He had Imperial Guardsmen with mortars and the Loyal 32 to hold the backfield, and then he also had the Forge World Knight with the Flamer. I'm not sure what that knight is.
Atropos? Acheron? One of those?
So, the Acheron, I think it is. Had basically a giant flamer with like 3 damage or something like that.
Yeah, it's nasty.
So I've played against the knight before, and I've played against Wolfen before, and I knew that I had to play really, really conservatively to mitigate the damage dealt by the Long Fangs and the mortars. And I was able to use some bigger line of sight blocking to essentially target everything on one flank, because we were playing Hammer and Anvil, to mitigate the damage on my Ravagers that then ended up basically murdering most of his army later in the game. And then using the Talos, the Haywire, and the Grotesque in close combat to deal with the Knight. My little unit of Scourge with Haywire did like a record 16 mortal wounds to this Knight.
16
which was awesome. So that was probably the game that I felt I played very tactically. And then the toughest match I had and the best game I had was against Manny from the UK. And that was round 4, and he played Deathwatch. And it was... I haven't actually had a chance to play against a Deathwatch army that's been like piloted as well as Manny did. And it was a game where we both were like on the same page. I helped him pick out his secondaries because he was picking all the wrong ones against my army. We were just having a lot of fun at that point. And he was running 5 Smash Captains and 40 Deathwatch veterans with like Stormbolters and Bikers and Terminators all interspersed in the units, and 30 Scouts. And it came down to like 4 points, 3 or 4 points at the end of the game. And it was just back and forth all game long. And just those wound on 2's bolters were just ruthless to everything I had in my army.
Yeah, because because you don't really have armor saves, right? So if things are wounding you on 2's, your high toughness doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it mitigates the toughness, and yes, the Talos do have a 3-up save, but when I'm taking 26 wounds at a time on 3-ups, like each volley of these Marine squads was like killing a Talus and a half.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's really crazy. Cool. How much Deathwatch was there? Because right before LVO, Deathwatch was like getting really popular. I played against Deathwatch in Sudbury. It seems it's probably the best Marine faction right now. But was there a lot of Deathwatch floating around?
I did notice a few top Deathwatch players, and I feel that they have the tricks that Marines wish they had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with Deathwatch, like, it's one of those armies kind of like Eldar, where if you don't write a strong list and if you don't know exactly what you're doing, it can be very unforgiving because they're so expensive. But on the flip side, if you write a really solid list, I'm sure Manny does. I know he's a pretty top player in the UK, and if you do know what you're doing, it's basically like Marines with Eldar tricks. Like, it's just so, it can be very, very cerebral playing that army because there's so many things that they can do, and there's so many ways that they can abuse the various mechanics of mixed units and teleporting and ammunition and, falling back and shooting and all this kind of stuff. I think it's kind of like a general's army, so to speak. And I think, you got to have a really strong, you got to know how to write that list, because it's really easy to like want all the goodies and upgrade too much, and all of a sudden you only have like 15 models and they all just die.
Yeah.
But if in the hands of a really good general, I think it's an army that you can do so much with it, and it always has an answer to everything.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's having that toolbox, I think, is a really strong, that flexibility is a really strong thing. And I think that's why Eldar does so well, day in, day out.
They've just got a lot of tools for a lot of different situations. I remember when I was playing Dominic in Sudbury, I was like, every time I do something, it'd be like, oh, well, I have this or this stratagem or this ability. I was like, oh, wow, you got something for like every situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. How about you, Jim? What was your best game and worst game?
I'd say, as far as like my best game that I felt the best about, probably be my third game on day one against a Dark Eldar player. It wasn't a traditional kind of Prophets of Flesh Dark Eldar player. They had a lot of witches and Catholites and flyers and stuff, and I think that was a game that could very easily not go my way because of the mobility of that army, and I think I played it really well tactically. And I think the highlight of that game was causing one of his planes to crash by just running some cultists and advancing one of my tanks in a certain way, and kind of being able to see that is something I could do, and how to abuse kind of the flying mechanics so that his plane would crash, I think was it was kind of like a fun little thing to kind of do. And it's one of those things you always think, I think you could do it, and then actually doing it on the tabletop, it's like, hey, that's cool. Like, I've always wanted to do that, but to be able to actually do that was really nice. And then I'd say my worst game, and probably not just one of my worst game of the tournament, but probably one of the worst games of 40K I've ever played, was my second game. And we're not going to name names, but I was playing, the guy that I was playing was kind of top 25 in ITC, so very, very competitive player, and playing Yanari. And I understand that we're at LVO and that everyone's competitive, and I know that they have the code of conduct, and we actually had some issues with the code of conduct, which was kind of a lot of the contention in the game. But basically, I felt that he was trying to use the code of, like, from my like, I guess, not even understanding, but like how I would assume that the intention of the code of conduct is the code of conduct was designed to prevent people from abusing the way that they play. And if you actually read the code of conduct, it's quite strict on a lot of stuff. So with declaring things, with declaring dice rolls, with moving models, it's very, very strict, the code of conduct. And the reason it's strict and specific is because they want you to prevent people from abusing it and cheating or doing things that are sketchy. But on the flip side, if you played to the letter of the code of conduct,
Yep.
literally, if a dice roll is out of line of sight, so if a dice rolls out of line of sight of your opponent, or if you don't declare every single thing that you're doing, your opponent can essentially mulligan or veto your action and tell you to do it again, or can tell you that you can't do that anymore because you didn't declare it. You didn't verbalize it. And I kind of felt like he was weaponizing the code of conduct against me and kind of using it against me to get every advantage during the game. So like if I rolled the dice and it didn't land in his immediate line of sight, he would tell me to re-roll it if it was in his not in his favor, or if I literally took my hand off the model for a second to readjust my hand, he would say that I couldn't move that model any further because I had put it down, and it caused a lot. Like it was one of those games where I was like, wow, like this is, like I play a very honest game. Like I know people hate the word intent, and I always declare my actions. I talk about what I'm doing. I make sure it's very clear with my opponent, but at the same time, I'm not a robot, and obviously, I nudge a model, or I want to make adjustments to things as I'm playing that I think are fairly reasonable things to do. And the code of conduct, if you read it, it's quite strict on what you can and can't do. And I really felt like he had weaponized the code of conduct and was using it to basically gotcha me every turn. So he was trying to his advantage. So it wasn't that he felt like I was trying to abuse the game and get an advantage. He was trying to see how he could use that code of conduct to prevent me from doing things. And so if I didn't play it exactly by that code of conduct and didn't declare and didn't roll exactly the way that the code of conduct states it, he would try to basically veto or argue that I couldn't do something or I couldn't whatever. And I really felt like it was against the spirit of the code of conduct and against the spirit of the game. And we had the judge come over a few times, so we had to have a judge called over. And the argument got so heated, and this is kind of my frustration, and this is more on myself. I let myself get really frustrated, so I was actually winning that game going into turn 6. I was up 4 points at the bottom of turn 5. So my start of my turn 5, bottom of turn 5, I was up 4 points going into turn. So I had my turn 5, and then I had my turn 6, and he had 1 turn. And I was kind of just so frustrated and so flustered that I was just trying to kind of get through the game, and I just wanted the game to end at that point. And I made a bunch of mistakes kind of in that bottom of my 5, and he capitalized on them. Ended up getting like a 7-point swing in his turn 6, and I ended up losing the game. And afterwards, I think I was kind of mad at myself for letting myself get so. I was like emotional. I was like flustered. I was just like very, very like unhappy with that I played someone that would play that way against me. And it really, really, the guy, he kind of tried to be nice after. And I was just like, dude, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in your apology. I'm not interested in talking it through. I'm not interested in you trying to like make up now that the game's over. I was like, I'm done with you. Like, I'd never play you again. This is one of the worst games I've ever had. And I don't even want to shake your hand. You know what I mean? And that is something that has never happened to me. I've been playing Warhammer for 15, 16 years. I have never played a game like that. And it really, really left a bad taste in my mouth, that game. And I was really upset after, because obviously, I thought I had a pretty good chance of at least going 5-1. So to lose my second game because of those reasons, it just was a really, really bad experience. So, yeah, I know that's not a great story for everyone, but
it's too bad because the code of conduct was created just for these kind of situations. But I think it was Diogo, after reading it when it first came out, who said it out in the Facebook chat. He's like, people are going to use this against you. Exactly that situation. Oh, I didn't see that roll it again, right?
Right.
Because there are people out there who would do that, right? And in a 600-person tournament with a bunch of people that you don't know, the chances are you might run into somebody like that. And that really sucks that happens to anybody. Yeah. So I feel like they do need to edit the code of conduct a little bit to make it with that in mind, that people would weaponize, as you say. That's probably the best way of putting it. To weaponize the code of conduct, which is totally not what it's for, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was my worst game, and I don't have anything else to say about it, and I hope that guy gets some help, because I think he needs to learn how to like be a proper sportsman. So.
Yeah, well, there was stories floating around. It's unfortunate. I'm a part of a whole bunch of chat groups, which is probably not great. But one of the only things that comes out of last weekend, other than Brandon Grant won, is all these incidents, right, that now start to float to the surface, unfortunately, and that's the only thing that people talk about post LVO, which is unfortunate. I know that Skari had a problem, and we don't have to talk about it necessarily, but it's along a similar vein, and there were controversies here and there. In fact, some people, their only interest in finding out what happened at LVO was, what's this year's controversy? Last year was the Tony controversy. So
you're right, and I think at the end of the day, like, LVO doesn't have any sportsmanship scoring at all, and I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think, now, I'm not saying that they have to make it part of your overall score, but there should be some, they have this yellow card system with the judges, but that's a pretty, if you have three bad, and so I actually talked to a few people about the person I played, and the guy has a reputation. And there should be some system where if maybe you don't necessarily get a yellow card, maybe because yellow card involves a judge. It means someone has to come over, you have to physically, blatantly do something incorrect in front of a judge, and then you get that yellow card, right? But if you're just a douchebag basically, and you play three people and they all give you a thumbs down, right? That should also mean something. So it might not necessarily mean a yellow card because the judge wasn't there, but there should be some way to look at, hey, here's this guy that's played 2 or 3 games, and every one of his opponents has given him a thumbs down. We need to go see what's going on here, right? Maybe we should go talk to his opponents and see what he's doing. Because there's no other way unless every time I want, like, here, I got to call a judge. I played every game on a clock. So if I call a judge, it's on my clock, right? So, and you're not supposed to, or not allowed to, pause your own clock. I actually got shit for that when, during one of those contentious things, the clock was on my time, but he called the judge, so I paused it. The judge was like, don't pause the clock. And so I unpaused it, but I switched it to his time. I was like, okay, well, it's his judge call, it's on his time. But what it does is you can't track throughout the tournament. Maybe they're not doing things that are blatant yellow cards, but maybe they're just being really just shitty opponents. And if they get 2 or 3 thumbs down, at least, Adepticon has a system like that. I believe Nova had a system like that. There just needs to be some way for players to know how to police themselves, be able to police themselves, and to be able to police that kind of behavior beyond just yellow cards from the judges, because that takes a judge to observe an incident. And when there's 660 players, there's one judge for every 50 players. You know what I mean? So it's just not realistic to expect a judge to yellow card a player that you're playing. So I definitely feel like that is a bit of an improvement for next year. And it doesn't have to be towards any sort of score. It doesn't have to be towards any sort of award. It doesn't have to be related to your overall standing. It could literally just be some indication to the judges that, hey, this guy is not playing. He's giving people shitty games. Maybe we should go watch one of his games. He's gotten 2 or 3 thumbs downs. So let's go look at his games, or let's go have a conversation with the opponent and the players and see what happened in that game. Why did he get a 0 or a thumbs down for sportsmanship? Oh, that sounds really bad, so maybe we need to watch this guy moving forward. And a lot of tournaments do that, where if you give a thumbs down to your opponent, you talk to the judges. The judges will come talk to you and figure out why you gave them a thumbs down. And so you have that kind of avenue to discuss with the judges why this player is an awful person and shouldn't be playing the tournament. And at least it gives you a little bit of, at least there's a little bit of repercussions. But when you don't have any sort of system like that, that's the kind of behavior that you get. So
let me ask you a question then, Jim. Did this game ruin the LVO for you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think what it taught me is that for me, the thing that, look, if there's contentious parts of the game, I get it. There's often That was the only game that I had a judge called at all, twice actually at that game. Didn't ruin LVO. I had a great experience. Definitely go again. I think what it does though is it kind of it made me realize that for myself, I need to have a better mental game in the tournaments, and what that means is to not let an opponent that I'm not getting along with affect how I play on the tabletop. And I think that's what happened, and I think that's a learning experience for me. That's to become a better player, which is don't let them get into your head, don't let them frustrate you. Play your game, because I was winning the game the whole time. So even though I was super frustrated and there's this judge and we fought a lot about all sorts of things, I was still winning the game. And I lost. You didn't win that game. I lost that game. And that was because I let that situation get to my head, and it kind of got me off my game. And so I think the biggest thing I learned from that game is, focus, don't let those things affect you, and really focus on playing your game and continue to win. So no, I had a great LVO, and I definitely am looking forward to next year already. So
yeah, it's interesting as more and more players are doing 40K or whatever game professionally. Obviously pro sportsmen have sports psychologists, right? Like, it's a big part of the game, being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
So you wonder if such a thing is going to start coming into like tabletop gaming eventually. Maybe not right now, but
I could see it.
Yeah, I could definitely see it as well.
And Jim, I totally understand, but I don't want anybody out there to think that going to meet someone like that every single time you go to a big event. These are very isolated incidents.
For sure.
As Jim, you're saying, that's once in 16 years or whatever. Are you gonna run into that eventually? Probably, but it shouldn't be the thing that deters you from going and enjoying a giant, big, fun event like LVO, where one person, you don't want to let one person ruin your experience.
No, I mean, I played LVO is kind of the end of my season. I think I played 22 tournaments this year, which is a lot.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that was the only game out of 22 tournaments that I got out of feeling like I wouldn't play that guy again. So every other game I played this entire year, I would play every one of my opponents again. Even the games that were a little contentious, I never felt like they were trying to use the rules against me. Maybe we had a rules argument, or maybe there were some close calls, but I never felt like they were trying to use the rules to as I say, kind of weaponize the rules against me. And it's unfortunate, and from what I understand, the gentleman has a reputation, so it is what it is, and I think I've just learned, and I just got to be a better player mentally, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. Because at the end of the day, I can control my emotions, right? And I can control how I feel, and that's the most important thing is learning how to do that.
100%. No, that's like, it's super important. One of the biggest aspects of getting into competitive gaming, other than learning your play style, learning what your army can do, learning what other people's armies can do, the next step is that mental state. And it's all encompassing. It's all from not blaming just the dice when you lose to, not letting somebody get under your skin. So
Skari, you had a similar incident, and while we don't have to talk about the incident, did it ruin your LVO?
It did not. No, not at all. I cannot wait for next year. I feel like it's going to make me a better player.
So how, short of hiring sports psychologists, how do we, non-professional 40K players who like to compete, how do we develop those skills other than just having it done to us a bunch of times?
Honestly, I think you have to kind of rely on your support network, first of all. Don't be afraid to speak out against, folks that are toxic for the hobby, right? We're all there to have some fun, and you have to know that it's okay to basically say something. It's okay to make people aware. Not go out and just grab your pitchforks and your torches or whatever, but making sure that it's the issue at hand that's addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day too, it's funny because, you know, in my professional, like my non-gaming life, I'm in tons of high pressure situations, and, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, that I go through that are very like stressful, that are very mentally hard. And it was a really, and I generally don't get rattled. Like there's very little professionally outside of, you know, 40K that rattles me. I think being in that environment, in that competitive environment with a lot on the line, definitely, definitely has a different effect. And I think, you know, had I just gone back to the same kind of methods and practices I use in my real life, or even though 40K is my real life, in my like professional life to deal with stress or difficult situations, or how do I deal with those situations normally? I think those apply to 40K. So, you know, I definitely don't feel like there's anything specific to 40K. I think it's just about, you know, dealing with stress and conflict and learning how to do that. And I think at the end of the day, like, you know, sometimes you got to go through it, because like now looking back at that game, you know, I had 29 minutes on my clock. I could have probably been like, and it was turn 5 and I had 29 minutes. So I could be like, you know what, I need to take 5 minutes. I'm going to go walk away. I'm going to go have a glass of water. You know, I have plenty of time to play this game. And I'm going to kind of come back and I'm going to look at the table with, you know, fresh set of eyes and not worry about it. Rather than just trying to get through the game, I'm going to go kind of be assertive and kind of relax. So I think, you know, I don't think there's anything 40K specific. I think it's just a matter of, you know, knowing how to deal with those situations, and, you know, the same way you deal with stress in your regular life, hopefully you deal with stress regularly well, which I do normally in my life. So it was sucked to kind of have that a bit of a mental breakdown over 40K, because it feels like it's just a game. So
yeah, that's a pretty good tip, actually. I've had a few opponents who something didn't go well, or they just rolled, you know, 5 ones, or something happens, right? And then instead of going on tilt, they're just like, okay, I'm gonna put my dice down. I just gotta step outside for 5 minutes, and then they come back and it's fine, right? Like, happens to everybody in 40K, even if it's not something malicious to do with behavior or anything, like the dice go cold or whatever, right? Like sometimes it's just too much. So so you can see how that happens for sure. But yeah, that's a good tip, just to step away, especially if you've got time. Yeah. Cool. Okay. We've got some people, no questions, but Martin comments that players like that kind of ruin the spirit of the game, which is probably something we all agree upon. And certainly there's been a talk about Skari's experience. He's posted about it, and that's all up online for people to peruse if they want to look at that. But generally, actually, I don't think there were any major incidents this year, which is probably the first time as long as I've been following LVO. So that's good. And the code of conduct is definitely a step in the right direction. That could be edited, obviously. It should be a continual work in progress, but certainly it is something that is needed and should be well received by everybody. So
yeah, you know, it's one step at a time, and everything needs polishing. You know what I mean? Like, over time, they'll polish the code of conduct. They'll polish all those things together to create like a very comprehensive system that kind of encompasses, you know, all things. Like, you know, there's so many instances in professional sports where, you know, players will do something, and over the course of years, it's been, well, the player rules don't say I can't do that, you know, and it's and over time, you know, sports even adapt to bring in caveats and things like that of like loopholes that were found in the sport, for example. And I feel that that's just going to be the same with Warhammer as it becomes more mainstream, and it becomes more of a like a sports style like game and event.
Well, it was on front page Twitch. I believe they paid for that, or maybe not. I don't know. But at one time there was 14,000 viewers, which is crazy.
I think they went up to 18,000 at one point.
Wow, which is just crazy.
Or 1,800, yeah.
It's really, really amazing and quite mind-blowing, actually, that 18,000 people would watch us play.
It's pretty cool.
And I think the cool part too is when they were off the front page, which I think was on Sunday, there's still about 3,300 people watching, which means that was like 3,300 actual Warhammer fans from around the world. When you think about that, that's pretty crazy. That there's that many players that are tuned in to watch the game.
Considering you only had 10,000 registered individual players in the ITC, you know, you had 800 of them there, plus maybe the narrative guys. You've got like 1,000 people playing 40K plus 3,000 people. That's like half the entire registry of the ITC watching. You know.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of props to Games Workshop for like since they've kind of. I mean, I've been playing Warhammer since 2000 basically, and it's crazy seeing what they've done with Warhammer TV and Warhammer Community, and you know, it's never been as good as it is right now. Like what they've built, like the kind of engagement they've built with the social Warhammer community right now, with like Warhammer TV and like, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think it's so like, I think you only get those 3,300 players because of the work that was put in by them. You know, I don't necessarily think that if this was 3 years ago, and we're broadcasting, you're going to get 3,300 players. Like that's a lot of that work was done by GW, and you know, I've had my love-hate with Games Workshop over the years, but the last year and a half, you know, I almost feels like they can do no wrong. You know, I even got my plastic Abaddon, so you know, basically, there's nothing left for me now to complain about. So.
Yeah, no.
Hard for you to find something to complain, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if you guys managed to watch any of the stream games, but since they kind of put Jeff and Frankie at some of the bigger tournaments, so i.e. having knowledgeable commentators, the stream has been way better as well for people to watch. Compared to the old days where the people obviously never played the game before and don't really know what's going on.
No, it's really good to have the guys know exactly what's going on. So that's fantastic.
Yeah,
definitely.
So, in terms of what's next for you guys? New ITC season? Are you guys both going hardcore this season?
I am.
Yeah. I already have my next 4 weekends. I'm pretty sure I have a tournament. So I have Guardian Cup in Portland this coming weekend. I have Barry Bash the weekend after. And then I believe, I just had LVO. And then I'm actually in LA for work, but there's a tournament I'm going to have my army with me from when I'm in Toronto, because I'll be going straight from Toronto to LA. And so I registered in a tournament I think it's called the CanHammer GT. It's in LA. It's like in a suburb of LA. I think it's sold out, but I've been talking to the organizer, and I'm first on the wait list. So I'm going to be there for a weekend. So hopefully I'm going to have basically 4 GTs in a row, right out of LVO.
That's crazy.
And then I got Adepticon coming up in March, which is big. And I definitely want to do Nova again this year. I went for the first time last year, and it was my first kind of big tournament, because I'd obviously never been to LVO or Adepticon before, and it was awesome. And I'm really looking forward to Adepticon. So if anyone needs a teammate, I don't have a team for the Saturday and Sunday at Adepticon, so just a shameless plug there. I have a very nicely painted army, and I can play. So please just slide into my DMs, and I'd love to be your teammate for Adepticon. Saturday and Sunday.
Jim Vesal,
you need one?
Take him on.
Yeah, there you go. So, mercenary for hire.
You could do
that's the spirit.
I'm playing the Longboard doubles on the Friday, and hopefully I'm not, though, because I get into the top 16 for Adepticon, which is I get into top tall order. So and then I mean, who knows what else is going to happen?
You can do it, man.
Apple City. Gonna go for the CanHammer team tournament. I probably have at least 12 to 15 tournaments this year scheduled, which is pretty crazy. So hopefully I don't burn myself out, but I haven't so far, because every weekend, the Sunday night, I'm usually like, okay, I'm done for a bit. And then by Tuesday, I'm like, okay, when's the next tournament?
When's the next one?
Yeah.
How about you, Skari?
I'm running the Barry Bash. going down to mini wargaming tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
This weekend I have.
Before you go any further, tell us a bit about that. What's going to happen?
A mini wargaming?
Yeah,
I'm gonna take some random fun stuff. It's gonna be great, and gonna play someone at mini wargaming. I don't know who yet, but I'm just gonna run up with a bunch of painted stuff and probably run like a triple patrol, dark that list of some crazy, just like fun shenanigans. Awesome. But after the Barry Bash, I'm looking forward to going to a few bigger American tournaments this year, like Nova. I wasn't able to get into Adepticon, but I'd definitely like to go there. If not this year, maybe next. And then I've got CanHammer Team, Capital City Bloodbath, the TKO, which is another GT happening here in Barrie. I definitely want to try squeeze myself into the Beef and Wing, and then plus a variety of RTTs locally that happen. But looking at maybe going to the Iron Halo GT as well. There's a big charity event they run in the desert somewhere, and maybe even Alaska. So we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah, ETC obviously,
ETC,
which is the big one.
Oh, well, of course, ETC. Yeah. That's that goes without saying, but that's in August. And then after that, there's just so many really cool events that I'm really looking forward to, and I might be doing some really cool work together with Nick Nanavati. We will be getting together, probably doing some coaching videos and things like that as a collaboration as well.
Awesome. So just a quick question. The ETC team, is it set now, or is CanHammer team like a final tryout?
So we've selected, we have 5 members on the team that are selected. Right now we're waiting on Devin, who is potentially getting a job in Japan. So if he does get a job, we'll have to be filling his spot, essentially. But we've selected 5 so far, and we are still to select 3 more.
Is this man selected yet, or not?
Jim's not on. He's on the short list though, because okay. He is awesome and he knows how to play his shit really well. So
I got a big mountain to climb, man. There's better players than me for sure. So.
Look at that humble! Look at that humble!
Coming up to prove
yeah, I gotta
20
win a few tournaments here.
He's Jim. Like, it's just he knows his shit really well. It's been a pleasure actually. All the applicants that we've had are really showing like just some incredible skill. All in all, like in general, so it has made the selection of the team very tough because in terms of playing level. Like every single person on that has applied and has kind of gone through the selection process has really shown that they have what it takes to be on the team. And, and to those that don't make the selection this year, be assured that you are definitely like in the running for selections in future years as well. This is not just a 1-year thing. This is a process and a system that we want to put in place to make Canada like a top contender for 40K, like globally. Like we want Canada to make a mark and to really kind of set ourselves apart from, just like the riffraff and just be like taken seriously when it comes to competition.
Yeah, they say the European meta is like 6 months behind, but the Canadian meta is actually like 6 months ahead. So watch out.
That's right.
We're so far.
We got our own meta.
We create the meta.
Canada, so our meta up here.
We do.
All right, I got some questions for you guys. But before I come to from the stream, before we come to that, I'm going to ask you, Skari, to come up with a skill testing question for our giveaway tonight.
A skill testing question.
So, for example, my last skill testing.
I already know which one. I already know a question.
Sweet. Okay. So,
can I answer? Can I win?
I guess you can, Jim. There's no rule saying you can't. So we have a question from Eradicus at Skari. You've been very vocal on a number of platforms about your experience with the game versus Alex and the fact that you wish it was a more fun game. The question is thoughts on gaps between the ITC player pack and what the community would consider a fun game.
First of all, I haven't really been very vocal. I posted up like a recap on the games that I had, and I did make a note that it was not an enjoyable game, but it's kind of taken a life of its own since then.
That's
and you know, I definitely made it very clear that I did not want to like elaborate or make it too like anyway. But I feel like as Jim was saying, I really like the thumbs up, thumbs down system. You know, something that'll kind of give a check to the judges to kind of, you know, make sure that people are having a good time. You know, and I understand why they took sportsmanship scores out, so that you can't just like, if you lose a game, you don't just chipmunk somebody and give them all zeros on sportsmanship. That'll like take them out of the running for the event. However, I do feel that an element of sportsmanship style scoring, or some sort of element of that social contract that we basically is an unwritten contract when we all go to play this game together, that should be in that spirit, should be put into place.
Cool.
Yeah, just not to steal Skari's thunder here, but I don't think ITC has anything to do with it, because I've had I know you mentioned the ITC player pack and what can you consider a fun game, but I actually don't think the ITC has anything to do with it. I think the player pack is simply just a set of missions, and at the end of the day, it's your opponent that matters, right? And I've played you know, Eternal War, I've played Maelstrom, I've played made up missions, and I've had good games in all of them and bad games in all of them. So I actually don't think, you know, I think what the ITC player pack does as a whole from a mission set is it makes you feel like you're not losing that game due to the mission. It gives everyone a little bit of an even playing field. Not that they're perfect. I think the ITC missions definitely need some tweaks, but I think at the end of the day, what it does is it gives everyone a kind of a solid foundation to start on, and everyone to feel like when you go into a game, you know how to win the game or what you need to do to win. And I think that actually contributes to better games versus worse games, because some of the games that I've had that have been the worst are when they're very lopsided because the mission. And sometimes even if you try to be really nice or you try to be like a fun guy, if the mission is still lopsided, that you're just destroying your opponent, or there's just no chance for your opponent to win, they're definitely not going to have a fun game. Yeah. And so you know, I know it's a lot of I don't want to call them casual players, or a lot of players don't like the ITC missions, or they don't like the ITC in general. It's a bit of a boogeyman. But from my experience, someone that plays both, has played a lot of both, I find actually the games using the ITC missions specifically definitely feel a lot more equitable and a lot more fair for both players. And there's a little bit less room for, you know, saltiness due to the mission. And I think that actually contributes to more fun games. Now, you might not like the specific missions, and you might have there might be other types of games you can play that creates that level playing field. But I definitely feel like the ITC gets a little bit of a bad rap as far as the competitive players and kind of how the players play in it. I think where you're actually seeing it is in the player pack. It's more kind of to do with the competitive nature of the ITC. So there's less to the missions, but more due to just the general competitiveness of ITC. And a lot of people want those points. They want to, you know, so that can definitely contribute to you know, more kind of competitive or mindset. So just wanted to defend the ITC there.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a shout out from somebody, Chapel85 from Germany. Sweet, thank you for watching and listening. They are slowly getting into ITC, although they do play obviously ETC and other formats there. We have a question from Lonely Sandbar to Skari. Any idea if your mini wargaming will be Vault or Freeview?
It's I've asked them to make it Freeview so that everybody can enjoy it. So I'll make sure that's Freeview for everybody.
Excellent. And Xandrate says call out Chris at Mini Wargaming because he's used to the Dark Eldar fight.
I'll show up tomorrow morning if I survive the snow, and we'll go from there.
And Eradicus says play Steve. What are my plans? Yeah. So my plans are, because now I have to like run all these things, so I don't actually get to play anymore. So I am going to Adepticon. Yes. I'll see you in the top 16, Jim.
Hopefully.
No,
it's a tall order.
Yeah, no, I'm playing AOS doubles with Chris on the Friday or whatever.
Are you playing in the champs as well?
Yeah. And that's it. And then I'm running a bunch of things, and I'm going to an AOS team tournament, I think, in June. And so I'm kind of straddling a couple of games. So, yeah, hopefully I can get my tournaments in. I did end up top custodies in Canada somehow.
Nice.
Mostly because somebody forgot to combine two of the same person, I suspect. But anyway. But yeah, and then hopefully tag on a team tournament for a for a big score like I did in Sudbury, and boom.
There you go. Riding that wave.
Snoop DeVille wants to shout out Dragonfall tournament in Chicago.
Okay.
Carney says, what's the future of Necrons? Campaign book or a new codex? Well, I don't think they're going to get a new codex, but certainly they'll get something like Vigilus, probably.
Back to the Tomb World with all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw
Don't be so surprised, though. At the preview seminar for LVO, they did a Q&A at the end, and one of the questions that was asked was, are they going to be revisiting codexes? And a lot of people assume that now that Gene Circle's out, it's going to be campaign books and then Sisters of Battle sometime at the end of the year. But they were very, without directly saying yes, no, there will be other codexes, they basically said there will be other codexes this year outside of Sisters of Battle. And then they also said that there's a potential, or that they've looked at reprinting and revisiting older codexes. So if I was a betting man, which I am, because
Did you bet?
I did gamble a lot in Vegas, so I am a betting man apparently. I would peg for at least the new Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine book this year. And I also would guess at least one other book, maybe from the first 6, probably gets redone. Because you got to think about how fast they're releasing the Age of Sigmar tomes. They're literally coming out one every month, basically. There's like a new Age of Sigmar handbook, and we have 10 months of December left, and we only really know about one codex, which is Sisters. There's no way they're going to get through this whole year with releasing 140K
without making at least something. Yeah, I could see that.
I bet you there's a lot of 40K that we haven't even thought about. So cross your fingers for the Necrons, because they could be some dark horse codex that no one thought would get a release, and all of a sudden, boom, new Necron book. You never know. So
yeah. So somebody commenting here, M Popa, that ITC feels more fair than chapter approved 2017 missions, but that chapter approved 2018 missions seem pretty good, and I know that probably ITC is going to adopt some of the parts of the new chapter approved missions, like the whole army deploying thing, and the if you deploy first, you go first, you can choose to go first, sort of thing. So they posted it in their survey, but nothing's to say that that's going to be pretty much, I believe, a community driven thing. Yeah. I don't think they'll put anything into practice before they've made it clear that they're going to have they're halfway through the season revamp and the start of the season revamp. So after they send out all the surveys for actual LVO and kind of get everybody's feedback and stuff like that, definitely things like, but even things as simple as make sure you give us more than half an hour for lunch, that sort of stuff. So yeah. Here's an interesting comment. So Lonely Sandbar saying, be kind of neat if they wrapped up Renegades and Heretics into a new Chaos Space Marine book, as opposed to leaving it to wither as a Forge World army. And obviously they just came out with the Custodes rules for all the Forge World units. So you wonder, and apparently that was written by GW, not Forge World, as is evidenced by the rules being semi-playable. So one wonders if we're going to start seeing Forge World rolled in to GW codexes or publications now. And hopefully from separate places.
I would... we saw Renegade Guardsmen with Blackstone Fortress, so I could definitely see them releasing that as a plastic kit with a few other bits and bobs and doing a full Renegades book. the models exist in plastic for Renegade Guard. So
They do.
You know, and I don't know, you know, I'm not a plastics miniature manufacturer myself, but I do know generally once they've created the assets, it can't be that hard to release that sprue in a standalone box. I mean, if you think about something like Gene Sealer cults, you know, their brood brothers are basically just Cadians with a sprue. So I could see them releasing that Renegade Guardsman kit, releasing a few sprues of Renegade heavy weapon guys,
Spikes.
and then maybe like a vehicle sprue for Chaos. And you know, you got your Renegade tanks and your Renegade whatevers. The Malefic, the Psychers are in that box. You know, they just need a few characters. So I definitely, and then you know, they even got Beastmen. So you can even do an army of like Renegade Beastmen, because that's a big part of the Renegades and Heretics. So, you know, I don't think that's unreasonable to ask for a Renegade book, and I think that would be awesome to do something like that.
Well, you've got just they're just releasing so much new stuff. Like they're just going to keep on. It's going to be a cycle. They're not going to stop. Like you can just expect it to just keep on going. You know, they're going to feed the dragon, and the dragon being our wallets, giving them money.
All right. Yeah. So Dave Scarlatella would like Death Core of Krieg to get an update. Erraticus says he loves you, Skari, and
love you too, buddy.
You're everything positive about Canada, polite and positive.
Oof, you haven't met all Canadians like Jim.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
Exandrate asks, after LVO, did anything jump out to either of you guys on what might be coming along in the next FAQ? Good question. We saw a bunch of Castellans. We saw 7
Yeah,
flyers.
but they've made it very clear that they're not going to change the rules in the FAQs. Like, they don't want to use the FAQs for points changes.
But they did. They did in the March FAQ though, right? So the March FAQ last year.
Sorry, no, they didn't want to change like basic rules in chapter approved. I think that's what it was.
I can imagine though. I think I could imagine the Castellan. I think the only thing they really need to do the Castellan is max the invulnerable to a 4++, and then I think it gets reasonable. I think having a 28 wound toughness same model with a 3++ is kind of, it just makes it so hard to kill. And I also feel like, you know, I don't actually even think it, like, I mean, I got a little bit of a bias here because I play Nurgle Chaos and Thousand Suns, and Castellans really don't scare me. I usually just ignore them, and they kill 4 Plague Bearers a turn, and I laugh. So generally, you know, I don't find it a big issue, but what I think the problem with Knights and Castellan in general is that it just changes the meta so much. It's like, you know, they have such a heavy
impact on the game.
Meta.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you want to take 3 Leman Russes or 3 Space Marine tanks or Predators. If he's got a Castellan, they're all dead in 1 turn.
Yeah.
You know, I can take 600 points in guard tanks, and if he's got a Castellan, my Castellan is perfectly fine because it's got a 3++ invulnerable, and all your guard tanks die in 1 turn. So it's like, what it does is it invalidates too much of the meta, and I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed. I definitely feel like if you notice in the new Gene Sealer cults, the guard detachment, so they can take Brood Brothers like the guard, but they get half CP, right? So I could definitely see them using that as a bit of a blueprint for the future, where whichever detachments your warlord get full CP, and then allied detachments get half CP.
And no access to anything else. Like, they can't use
well,
other stuff.
I think that's a little bit extreme, because I think, you know, if you do want to just take one or 2 knights, like, the stratagems and the traits affect how those allied detachments function. So, like, my demon army, if I can't take any of the traits or stratagems, then it affects fundamentally how that army works. I can't deep strike, I can't do anything. So it basically becomes useless. Whereas if you just give me half CP, I can still do those things, but it doesn't become this big battery to feed my knight, right? And I think that's a lot of the issue. At the same, like, I'm very pro soup. Like, I think there's nothing more fluffy than Marines, Guardsmen, and Knights fighting side by side. If you read any of the books, any of the novels, that's the most flavorful, like, thing that there is. Guardsmen and Marines fighting Chaos, fighting with Renegades and Demons. Like, that is literally how all the stories go. So when people are like, oh, it's not fluffy. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? That's perfectly in line with...
It's one Marine surrounded by 30 guardsmen fighting a demon, you know? Yeah.
I think so. I definitely feel like I want to be able to use my collection, and for me as a Thousand Suns player, I now have Death Guard, I have Chaos Space Marines, I have Demons. So GW would be stupid, but I would never collect those armies unless I could use them with my Thousand Suns. So GW would be stupid to take that away. I think they're going to lose a lot of money, money's important.
It's the meta defining, that's the thing. Like I'm playing through all these Custodes beta rules right now, which has a bunch of vehicles in it, and I'm like, well, these are cool, but if I come up a Castellan, they're all dead. So therefore, they're not good. You know, this flying knight is cool, but gets downed in one turn by Castellan. So therefore, it kind of sucks. Like,
and there was something like 78 Castellans at LVO.
A lot,
like,
yeah.
The field is 660. That's insane.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I think it was the most chosen like non-troop model in the tournament.
Okay, so Erraticus asked you guys thoughts. Apparently, Jeff Robinson said LVO will be Yanari's last hurrah, quote unquote.
Then again, Geoff was really tired and, probably didn't, he'd been casting for... Like, the thing about Inari is it doesn't stop being as powerful as it is. It's people have just gotten used to seeing them over and over and have developed strategies to deal with them. It doesn't mean that it's not a good army.
No,
Hold on one second.
I think what he was saying is that after LVO, maybe they're going to be getting a codex, or maybe they're going to be getting FAQ'd. So or they're going to be getting a nerf. Not necessarily that they're not going to get any more. I think kind of that's what he was implying.
Yeah, or maybe something similar
I could 100% see an Inari codex.
Like
that
the
army, right? If you think about it, Assassins are getting an update in the White Dwarf next month, right? So besides fortifications, the only thing left in the index is Yanari, right? So I can imagine they do a fortification update at some point, and then put in the chapter approved. And then it's like Yanari gets its, and then all those indexes can be still burned, right? We don't need them for anything. Because I personally hate the index. I hate people using index. Like I don't mind the index. Like, hey, I want to use my character on a bike that don't no longer exist. I hate hey, I'm going to take a version of this in the index and take the cheaper version of it because the next version is cheaper, and I'm going to kind of game the system to use a better version of it and get a cheaper weapon. I don't like that part of it. I don't mind it if there's a rule for you to use your character on bike that doesn't have rules anymore. I just don't like the fact that people kind of game it. But I would be very, very okay with them kind of turning index into open and air to play only, and to match play, it's codex is only, just like the EPC does.
Okay. Skari's just has to leave because he has to take a call. That's okay. We're almost done anyway.
Yeah, sorry guys, I have to head out. It went a little longer than expected, but for anything, Jim's been a pleasure chatting. Darren's been a pleasure chatting. LVO was amazing. So if you can go, do go.
Yep. I wish I could go. One time at least. Yeah. Well, anyway, I think we're at the end of the questions, so what we're gonna wrap it up anyway. So thank you very much, Skari, for joining us, and Jim, thank you very much for joining us, and well done on your LVO performances. And,
thank you.
I will see you guys hopefully soon. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching and listening. Next week, Family Day. We have 2 live streams on Family Day. We have a 40K game in the morning, and we have new Flesh Eaters plus Skaven at night. 2 fresh new battle tomes. Oh yeah, so Skari, are you still there?
The Dark Kin. Yes, I am.
What's your skill testing question?
Okay, so name 2 of the other Officio Assassinorium temples that do not currently have assassin models.
Oh, damn. You're going to have to text me the answer to that. So first person in the chat who can answer this question correctly will win the Gloomspite Gits Battle Tome, courtesy of Hoyt at Thunder Games and Gifts. Boom. So
Awesome.
So many things to give away. It's crazy.
I love it. Have a good one, guys.
All right. So we're going to give this a few minutes for people to enter their answers. Cheech and Chong temples is incorrect. This is a hard question. It's definitely skill testing. If nobody gets it, then what we'll do is we'll give this away next time with the next book, which will be probably Flesh Eaters or Skaven. We'll give away 2 battle tomes next time, and we'll also have another discount code to give away. So, I was saying, so Monday morning we'll be streaming a game, Beta Custodes versus Orcs again. A different kind of Orc list. We're just trying some stuff, and I'm trying out the Custodes vehicles, so that should be fun. And then later that night, we will be streaming a game of Flesh Eaters Revisited versus Skaven Revisited. 2 new battle tomes against each other. So that should be fun. And next week, we're going to do Flesh Eater Courts and Skaven battle tome reviews with Hui on the podcast. So lots coming up next week. M. Popa shouting out Jim. Thank you very much. Jim is actually hung up now, but thank you for shouting him out. He is definitely a cool guy to play. I've played Jim myself. So Lonely Sandbar has got the answer correct. It is Vanus and Venom, and just beat Martin by 5 seconds. So there you go. So Lonely Sandbar, you are the winner of the Gloomspite Gits battle tome. So what you have to do is contact me, either message me on Facebook from CanHammer or email us at canhammer.yt@gmail.com and to let me know where I can send this baby. And that's it. So thank you very much for watching tonight, guys. Everybody on Twitch and everybody listening on iTunes. You can, of course, support us here on Twitch, on YouTube by subscribing. And if you really like what we do, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/CanHammer. Thank you very much, everybody, for your support. And thank you for watching and listening. And see you next time.